Nickel, copper, cobalt, these are great minerals to have, but the true transformative value isn't in digging them up, it's in what you can make from them. The biggest problem facing the US, Europe, and every other major automaker isn't the minerals themselves, it's who controls the processing. Currently, China controls over 70% of the world's battery processing capacity. If we don't process them here, we're just selling dirt. In 2022, the US, DRC, and Zambia signed a landmark MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, to build an African-run EV battery ecosystem. This is the $4 billion factory plan that is supposed to change everything. But is it a political promise or industrial reality? The goal of this ambitious MOU is to create a secure, ethical, and fully integrated supply chain from mine to battery component. Western automakers rely on materials processed in Asia. More importantly, China currently dominates the midstream supply chain, controlling over 90% of global nickel and cobalt refining and 75% of cathode component manufacturing. Now, the US wants to de-risk its supply chain and reduce dependency on China for future electric vehicle production. Zambia and the DRC suffer from the resource curse. Despite having the largest deposits of copper and cobalt, the value addition and the high-paying jobs are created thousands and thousands of miles away. So this MOU plans to establish a precursor factory in making battery chemical components like cathode material a key step before final battery assembly right here in Zambia. Now this requires combining the DRC's cobalt and Zambian copper and nickel from mines like the Enterprise Nickel, and the US intervention provides the necessary sovereign guarantee and political backing to attract private investment. And this addresses long-standing investor skepticism regarding political risk in Central Africa. To be clear, this factory will not create the final battery packs, but they will produce the chemical inputs, which are the precursor cathode active material called PCAM. And this is the most expensive and technically demanding step outside of mining. This factory moves Zambia up the value chain from commodity, raw ore, to intermediate product, the chemicals. And this creates exponential value addition, significantly higher revenue retention, and specialized jobs. If you remember, in episode 1, we talked about the Enterprise Nickel mine. Zambia's 30,000 tons per year of nickel output is sufficient for 640,000 to 715,000 EV batteries annually, which contributes a projected 0.5 to 1% of annual boost to non-copper GDP, which is an estimated 170 million to 340 million US dollars. And by processing this nickel locally into PCAM, the value retained domestically is maximized. Critically, the chemical process generates commercially valuable co-products, primarily that of sodium sulfate. And this co-product can be sold globally for use in several things such as detergents, glass manufacturing, and the pulp and paper industry. And this creates a secondary revenue stream that helps offset high operational costs. And the required roles include chemical engineers, process metallurgists, which focus on hydrometallurgy, electrochemists, and advanced process control technicians. The process is highly energy intensive, which requires a dedicated, stable baseload power supply. And this power supply basically is equivalent to that of a small city. So again, that puts a bit of pressure on the government to work on the power deficit currently in the country. Now, while Zambia has a strong historical base of highly skilled mining engineers and metallurgists due to the Copperbelt, there'll be a need for a significant reskilling and targeted technical education or re-education, because that will be necessary to meet the precise high-purity chemical standards required for battery-grade PCAM production. Retraining programs for existing local metallurgists and engineers would typically take 12 to 24 months to gain the specialized certification needed for hydrometallurgy and chemical process control. This MOU is supported by the US government via Export-Import Bank and EXIM, which is critical for providing the loan guarantees necessary for the massive capital investment required. So where do we stand in this project today? Well, the initial feasibility study has been completed, which confirms the project's technical viability and economic potential. And this is a crucial milestone. You see, the projected construction timeline for a factory of this scale, from final investment decision to operational start, is estimated to be between 3 to 5 years, which makes the simultaneous completion of the Lowito corridor essential for success. And in this point in time, I'd like to reflect on the importance of the Afreximbank, African Export-Import Bank, as the mandated lead arranger and initial African financier of this project. They provide the necessary seed capital and structuring. Crucially, their financing is contingent on securing a major Western off-taker, providing the required sovereign guarantees and risk mitigation needed for the $4 billion scale. And here is the critical missing link. The final investment decision is still pending. The success hinges on attracting a major private sector co-investor, a would-be world-class battery chemical producer or EV manufacturer, potentially European because of the group that's backing it. So think of groups like BASF or automotive giants like Volkswagen or Stellantis to partner with the governments to build and operate the factory. The factory itself is highly likely to be situated in one of Zambia's multi-facility economic zones to leverage tax breaks. And of course, the proximity to Copperbelt, such as Ndola and Kitwe, as well as the logistics links to, like the Lowito corridor, would be taken into consideration. So here's my question to you. Which comes first? The completion of the $4 billion factory or the full operationalization of the Lowito transport corridor? Which timeline do you trust more? Send us your predictions and we'll create a poll. Okay, so now we look at the risks involved in this project. South Africa, which is rich in manganese, which is another battery metal, and Morocco, which is more geopolitically stable with existing port and trade links to Europe, are aggressively positioning themselves as African battery hubs. Zambia must execute quickly. And then there's the political risk, the DRC instability, which currently is the elephant in the room, right? The DRC, the source of cobalt, is prone to conflict and political shifts. And this could jeopardize and threaten the stability of the supply chain. So the DRC and Zambia reliance on the factory creates a massive shared economic interest. The $4 billion investment in the factory itself is a stabilizing force because it unites the US, Zambia, and the DRC, the tripartite structure, and sovereign guarantees to tie the region's economic success directly to the project's security. This incentivizes cross-border cooperation and risk mitigation. Let me repeat myself. The $4 billion investment in the factory itself is a stabilizing force. The tripartites involved, the US, Zambia, and the DRC, with this structure and sovereign guarantees, tie the region's economic success directly to the project's security. And this incentivizes cross-border cooperation and risk mitigation. Another risk, part C, is the slow pace of Western investment. The MOU was signed in 2022, which is 4 years ago already. And Western capital is often criticized for moving slower than Chinese or Middle Eastern capital. The presence of the Afreximbank and Exim is intended to accelerate the process. So our final takeaway is this. There's a shift because this factory is not about exports or just about exports. It's about industrializing the Copperbelt and creating a new class of highly skilled chemical engineers and technicians. And of course, there's also further infrastructure to be implemented, such as the Lowito corridor. To set the stage for our next episode, let me repeat myself on a couple of things. The cobalt deal got us the minerals. This MOU between Zambia, the DRC, and the US promises the factory the transformative leap in value addition. But this factory also needs people. It needs power and infrastructure. So in our next episode, we look at the 12,500 jobs already created at the Lusaka South Multi-Facility Economic Zone, MFEZ, the current manufacturing hub, and we will analyze how these existing industrial jobs are helping drive the entire country forward, which is setting the stage for this next $4 billion chapter.